Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com with my patented bathrobe review of UFC on Fox 6. Johnson versus Dodson. It was a pretty stacked event. I have to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Let's start from the bottom and run up all the way through the top. The first fight, which ran on Facebook and YouTube before the televised action started, featured welterweights David Mitchell and Simeon Thorsen in a fight that was really barely UFC caliber. Simeon Thorsen came in with a 1-1 UFC record, although the one win was over a fellow European UFC competitor, and the loss was to Seth Basinski, who tooled him. And David Mitchell pretty much did the same thing, took a unanimous decision, 30-27 on all three cards. Mitchell, I'd say, is marginally UFC caliber, but I'm not expecting big things from him. Good fight. Both guys fought their hearts out. Nothing against them. Just it wasn't high-level MMA or especially entertaining. But the FX card, the six-fight FX card, got off to a rocking start. Was middleweight Rafael Natal demolishing Son Spencer. Spencer came in as a late substitute, a welterweight, fighting up in weight at middleweight. Acquitted himself pretty admirably, but by the third round, Natal's size advantage and conditioning edge had borne fruit, and Natal got him with an arm triangle choke after trying a couple other submissions. Nothing hugely impressive from Natal, but somebody that I think is going to stay around at the lower tiers of the division. It'll be interesting to see how Spencer does moving down to his true home at welterweight. I'm not expecting big things from him. Then the heavyweight fight, Shawn Jordan and Mike Russo, brought a lot of excitement, a lot of fun. Mike Russo, a Chicago cop, fighting in front of his hometown crowd, came in fast and furious and was putting a beating on Shawn Jordan like Jordan was a hippie at the '68 convention. And Russo had been called out by Mayor Daley himself to crack some heads, but it wasn't to last. Russo shot his wad, as Joe Rogan infamously said on FX, and had to clarify later that's a gambling term and not a sexual illusion. But anyway, Russo was tired in the second round, and Jordan, the former LSU football player, put a beating on him in turn, got him down on his belly, and worked him with punches from the top. Got the finish at 3:48 of the second round. Russo's 36 years old, probably looking towards the end of his UFC career. The performance, it certainly wasn't embarrassing or anything. He burned too much energy in the first round, and Jordan's a very tough kid. I think Jordan will continue to improve. He's extremely green as a mixed martial artist, pretty much coasting off of his athletic ability. As he learns more technique, I think he can improve some, although I don't know. I don't think either of these guys is ever going to be a huge world beater. Czech Congo showed Shawn Jordan's limitations pretty roughly and brutally, and I expect the same to happen again when Jordan fights somebody of that caliber. Up next, light heavyweights Ryan Bader and Vladimir Matyushenko. Bader just put it to Matyushenko, caught him with a hard punch, dropped him, followed him down for an unusual front choke. That was called a guillotine, but it was more like a Bravo choke with a guillotine grip. I've got the Bloody Elbow grappling team on it. I think KJ Gould has some leads on the kind of choke it was, but it's an excellent choke for wrestlers to use because he took it from front headlock control and just pure muscled it. Had a tiny bit of a half guard, using a little bit of leverage with his legs, but frankly, it was just a power move. Not straight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but something more like a modified American wrestling with submission holds added. And frankly, Vladimir Matyushenko, it's probably time for him to end his storied MMA career. This is a guy who once fought for the UFC title against Tito Ortiz way back at UFC 33, one of the worst UFCs ever. And a decade later, he's still soldiering on, but it's not looking good. Ryan Bader really looked head and shoulders above Matyushenko, and that's not something that would have happened 10 years ago. I think that at his peak, Vladdy was a much better fighter than Ryan Bader ever was or ever will be, but those days are long gone. Ryan Bader's the young lion. Bader's then called out Shogun, which I think is a perfectly fine fight for him. Bader, his losses to John Jones showed that he's not going to be a title contender. Lyoto Machida marked him too. Bader's not going to be a title contender anytime soon, but he might as well get some more fights. He's going to be a fixture in the light heavyweight division for a while, I think, at the lower level. I think he could be a good gatekeeper, kind of the light heavyweights version of Czech Congo. Somebody that can keep the riffraff away from the real contenders. Then welterweights Pascal Krause and Mike Stumpf put on a 3-rounder that was a little bit of a lull in the action. Actually, it had good action, but it didn't catch me. It didn't move me. partly because of limited familiarity with the fighters. Krause is a German fighter that's making some waves, picked up a win. Look forward to seeing what he's doing. Mike Stumpf is somebody I think that deserves another couple chances in the UFC. I don't think he's going to make any huge waves, but not at all a bad fighter. That brings us to featherweights, Clay Guida and Hatsu Hioki. This fight is just a testament to the limitations of MMA judging. I mean, Hioki dominated on the feet, clearly outstruck Guida, landed all the damaging shots, landed many more strikes than Guida. Guida was able to get takedowns, but then on the ground, Hioki's guard dominated all the action. Guida was hardly able to land a strike, and Hioki was constantly landing strikes or working for submissions. Unfortunately, MMA judges are a simple lot, and if they see somebody on top, they see somebody winning, and that's all there is to it. Guida took the split decision. One of the judges actually scored the fight right, but Hioki's going to have to re-examine his game. This is his second straight loss following a decision loss to Ricardo Lamas. He probably deserved to lose the Lamas fight. I'm not saying that he didn't, but after losing to Guida that way, he's going to have to re-examine his game, and I look forward to Hioki coming back. And Guida is poised to make waves in the featherweight division. We'll see how much he can do with it. I really don't think his style lends itself. I don't think he has anything to offer Jose Aldo. I think he would be hurt badly in a fight like that. And I think even Ricardo Lamas would beat him pretty severely, but we'll get to Lamas in a minute. Up next, lightweights TJ Grant and Matt Wyman wrapped up the FX broadcast, and man, did TJ Grant put a beating on Wyman. Wyman's a very tough lightweight, gritty, well-rounded performer coming from a wrestling base, has been through it all in his half-decade UFC career. TJ Grant's somebody who flew under the radar at welterweight. Now that he's moved down to lightweight, he's really a force to be reckoned with. He crushed Wyman with standing elbows, finished him off on the ground. Just a brutal deconstruction of a tough fighter. And TJ Grant has been promised by Dana White that he would get a serious name opponent in his next fight. And I think Grant's somebody who's going to make a title run at lightweight. I think he's really got the complete package. He's incredibly big and strong for a lightweight. He's got decent stand-up. Those standing elbows were just vicious and brutal, and his grappling skills are really something special. He's got good wrestling and really good submissions. So I expect big things out of Grant. I don't think he'll take the title. I don't think he could stop somebody like Anthony Pettis or Ben Henderson or Gilbert Melendez, but I think he's worthy of being in the cage with any of those guys and could give him a good fight. I'd love to see him against Gray Maynard, actually. That brings us to the main Fox card. Started out a little slow with Ricardo Lamas and Eric Koch in the first round. Not the most action-packed fight, but in the second round, Lamas came out and just took it to Koch, nearly exploded his eyeball with an elbow on the ground there at the end of the fight at 2:32 the second round. Lamas put together a hot streak. He's got a title shot waiting for him against the winner of the Jose Aldo Frankie Edgar fight, and I think it's well deserved. Lamas got quite a bit of exposure on the Fox card, I'm sure, and so maybe it'll be interesting to see if he's connected with fans. I think it might have kind of overwhelmed fans, but I think he made some impressions. Certainly the biggest impression he's made so far in his UFC career. And up next, Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone. This was a fight for lightweight contenders. Pettis got a title shot because he just demolished Cerrone. A body kick about 2 minutes into this first round ended Cerrone's night. Pettis followed him down for some follow-up punches that were unnecessary. And frankly, Pettis just did everything he needed to do to deconstruct Donald Cerrone. Reading Jack Slack's breakdown of the fight on Bloody Elbow before the bout happened, it raised a lot of interesting questions, but he also gave a recipe for what Pettis needed to do to beat Cerrone, and frankly, it was stay out of the leg kick range and come in close and beat him. And Pettis came out as a southpaw. I think that threw Cerrone's entire game plan off. Cerrone never really figured out what to do with Pettis, and Pettis just put on an exhibition, did some incredible moves. He jumped into the fence again, and this time landed a knee off the cage rather than a kick. A Showtime knee, I'll have to call this move. And he tried a capoeira move that didn't land but was still flashy as hell. And so I look forward to Pettis' title shot. He's been promised a title shot against the winner of the Gilbert Melendez-Ben Henderson fight that's going to be on Fox in April. Should be a great fight. I think Pettis can do well against either of those guys, probably slightly better against Henderson. I think Melendez's wrestling and just implacable will makes him a bit more of a factor against Pettis than Henderson. That Pettis has beaten Henderson, of course, previously in the final WEC fight where he unveiled the Showtime kick, famously leaping off the cage to kick Henderson in the 5th round and knock him down and take that fight in an all-time MMA classic. So either way, fans can't lose if Pettis gets to fight Henderson again or Gilbert Melendez, and richly deserved. I think Pettis is probably the odds-on favorite to be the next UFC lightweight champion. Anyway, that brings us to Glover Teixeira and Quentin Rampage Jackson in the light heavyweight co-main event. Rampage had been talking endless shit that this was going to be his last fight, and by all accounts, it might be his last fight in the UFC. And Teixeira really showed he's got everything it takes to contend at the UFC level, and it's really a tragedy that Teixeira, who's 33 now, struggled with visa troubles. He could have been in the UFC 5 years ago after beating Sokoudjou when Sokoudjou had no defeats, and training under John Halkeman and Chuck Liddell at the Pit. Teixeira had it all. He had the resume, he had the connections, he had the skills. He just didn't have the visa to fight in the U.S., and so finally got that sorted out, and happily it's not too late. He looked great against Rampage. Rampage put on a real show of heart. Ballsy performance from Rampage, but he was just outclassed. Teixeira Rampage even managed to bait Teixeira into a boxing brawl towards the second half of the second round, and Teixeira more than held his own and won the fight on every aspect. Won the takedowns, won the stand-up, won the clinch fighting. Teixeira's coming for a title shot against John Jones. Frankly, I think Teixeira's more in the category of Rampage and Shogun Rua, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, the wave of light heavyweights that Jones has brushed aside. I don't see Teixeira being able to beat John Jones, but if he can hit him the way he hit Rampage, anything can happen. So we'll see what develops there. Teixeira, by the way, isn't making noises demanding a title shot, and he's just ready to fight whoever they want to put up next to him. And that brings us to the flyweight title fight between Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson. Dodson came out early and was catching and dropping Johnson with counterpunches, but faded, started to headhunt as the rounds went on. And after winning the first couple rounds, Johnson's relentlessness and conditioning just wore out Dodson. And by the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, in the championship rounds, Johnson showed he was championship stuff. He had the takedowns. He was landing hard strikes. I'm curious to see how the ratings will perform on Fox. I'm wagered to say that a lot of people tuned away from the flyweights as they went on and on, but for a hardcore fan like me, I thought it was great action. Great fight. I haven't been the biggest Mighty Mouse fan in the past, but he made a believer out of me by answering the test of Dodson. Dodson's about as formidable as they come at that level, with the incredible power and speed. They call him a magician for a reason, and Johnson solved the puzzle. He broke the spell, beat the magician, and held on to his title. I think the biggest question now is, who's he going to fight? He's pretty well cleaned out the flyweight division. He has wins. Let me pull up his record here. He's got wins over Joseph Benavidez at UFC 152. Split decision, though, over a 5-round fight, but I don't think Benavidez has anything to offer him. He beat Ian McCall, although their first fight at UFC on FX, Alves versus Campman, many people thought McCall won, but in the rematch it was clear Johnson was the better man. And so, it's just hard to say who's out there for Johnson to fight next. I don't know. Dodson would have had plenty of opponents, but not seeing a lot on the horizon for Dodson. So the flyweight division has a good ways to go before it's well stocked and comparable to the other divisions. It'll be interesting to see how they do long term with fans. Anyway, that's the Bathrobe review. I'm going to wrap it up. Let me know what you think. We'll be back on Bloody Elbow all week with coverage of UFC 156, and we'll be on MMA Nation's YouTube channel all week. We'll be back with Eugene Robinson, Dallas Winston, and maybe Luke Thomas this week for more tete-a-tetes. Anyway, subscribe to the channel and you'll get all our videos. You could be one of the lucky half-dozen viewers that's watching me record this live. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Hasta luego.